I believe that in some ways we are losing ground on this issue. We have fallen for a trap, and the trap is that this issue is all about personal stories. And if we can just come up with compelling personal stories, then we can just win the argument. It's got to be about more than that. If for no other reason, then we are people of the book. We are people of the gospel. It is not about my personal story. Now, I want you to listen to this woman's line of reasoning. Here's the complicated reality in which we live. All life is not equal. That's a difficult thing for liberals like me to talk about, lest we wind up looking like death panel loving, kill your grandma and your precious baby stormtroopers. Yet a fetus can be a human life without having the same rights as the woman in whose body it resides. She's the boss. Her life and what is right for her circumstances and her health should automatically trump the rights of the non-autonomous entity inside of her. Always. When we on the pro-choice side get cagey around the life question, it makes us illogically contradictory. When we try to act like a pregnancy doesn't involve human life, we wind up drawing stupid semantic lines in the sand. First trimester abortions versus second trimester versus late term, dancing around the issue, trying to decide if there's a single magic moment when a fetus becomes a person. Are you human only when you're born? Only when you're viable outside of the womb? Are you less of a human life when you look like a tadpole and when you can suck on your thumbs? The majority of women who have abortions, 1 in 3 American women are already mothers. And I can say anecdotally that I'm a mom who loved the lives she incubated from the moment she peed on those sticks, and is also now well over 40 and in an experimental drug trial. If by some random fluke I learned today I was pregnant, you bet your ass I'd have an abortion. I'd have the world's greatest abortion. That's brazen. Basically, she's saying some human lives need to be sacrificed if they stand in the way of other human lives. Let me ask you something. Where's your personal anecdote for her? Folks, abortion is spiritual warfare. What we just read from this woman, this is spiritual warfare. That's evil. To be that flippant about the taking of life. I wouldn't just have an abortion, I'd have the world's greatest abortion. She's talking about killing somebody. So what is our message to the culture at large? That Christ, through his incarnation, vindicates, validates, and verifies the sanctity of human life at every point, from conception to natural death. Folks, he could have come to this world in any way, shape, form, fashion he chose. God chose conception and every step of the birth process, thus validating, verifying the sanctity of human life while it's in the womb, all the way to the end of life, where God the Son experiences death, thus validating and sanctifying even that part of our experience. But here's the other thing. He also validates and sanctifies human suffering. So from conception, we know that life is sacred and set apart because God has told us so through having his Son, the second person of the Trinity, go through every phase of that process. Death as a part of human life. He experiences it, and suffering prior to death. So that whether we're talking about protecting babies in the womb or protecting people when they are weak and frail at the end of their lives from being cut off from the suffering that Christ validated, it's all the same theological principle. We read there in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, when I came to you, I determined to know nothing among you save Jesus Christ and him crucified. He goes on later in verse 5 to explain himself. Why? So that your faith might not rest on man's wisdom, but on God's power. I'm not ashamed of the gospel because it is the power of God unto salvation. The gospel is the power of God, not my compelling story. We preach Christ and him crucified. We have a biblical theological understanding of the sanctity of life. That's what we preach.